How's it going, Exiles? I hope you're all having a wonderful holiday period. So are you interested in playing the all-favorite Archmage Spark build? Everybody is like ramping and posting on the internet, making a build update for the guys every single day, making it even more expensive. Right now, with all the ingenuities, all the whatever this thing is called, the Mohawk's shield, all the dream fragments and all that crazy stuff, and all these build guides costing upwards of 500 divines or even more, I decided to bring you my build because I'm not having access to like these crazy amounts of currency. So I would say my build right now, as I'm level 90, costs roughly maybe 20 divines, I think even less. And I have in this build guide gearing instructions. You can start basically right when you enter the campaign with your first like 15 to 20 Exalt Orbs. You can fully gear this and absolutely no problem playing this even without the Everlasting Gaze Amulet. And I have the build guides and the planners in the description down below. We have all the trade queries and links, so you can just buy the items for like 1 to 50 exalts, whatever you want to do. I have all the explanations for the trade in these videos. We basically have everything here to get your Archmage Spark going, to easily blast tier 15 juiced maps without spending hundreds of divines getting there. So again, make sure to check the description down below for all the sections of this guide, wherever you are. There's level ranges, and make sure to check the planner in the description down below. There's much more detailed information also available in the planner, and also there's sections in the planner for the different level sections with and without Everlasting Gaze Amulet, and so on and so on. So now without further ado, let's get this going and let's start with the skill gems. Alright, skills. Let's go from the top to bottom. So Sigil of Power is basically our weapon swap. So all you have to do is you have to get yourself a chiming staff here on your weapon swap, which has Sigil of Power on it. And Sigil of Power is a very strong skill. You basically use it on bossing or when stationary, for example, before starting a ritual. You can just use the Sigil of Power and pump it up. So as you can see, my Spark tooltip right now is 31k. So let's put a Sigil of Power here on the ground, right? And now you can see it's already instantly jumping to 35. That's the first 15%. As you can see here, Sigil of Power has 1 stage. So now if we start spamming Sparks, as you can see, 2 stages, 3 stages, 4 stages now. Now we have 49k DPS. So this is basically a free 60% damage increase just from Sigil of Power. Just for putting like this stuff on your weapon swap, and it doesn't really cost you anything. You just buy it for like 1 or 2 exalts and call it a day. We only use 1 support gem here, which is Magnified Effect, to just make it a little bit larger. This is pure quality of life, but I highly recommend doing this because we don't need this gem anywhere else anyway. So next up is Spark. As you can see, my tooltip DPS is only 31k. I know there's like people having like 250k with crazy amounts of gear, but this is already high. I was doing perfectly fine when my tooltip DPS was already at like 15k, so now I'm at 31k. Most of this is actually inflated by cast speed. So for Spark, you want to have level 19 gem. You can get a level 20. I don't have a level 20 yet. I don't know what it's going to do with the mana cost. It's costing 3 divines right now, so as I'm going to be on vacation very soon, I might buy just 1 later because I'm pretty sure it's going to drop in price as more level 20 gems enter the market. But you want to put this to 20% quality. That's very important. It gives you extra projectiles. And support gems here are in order of appearance. So if you don't have a 6 link yet, it's not a big deal. Right now, I still recommend getting a 6 link for it. It's a huge upgrade, so I would recommend getting this over expensive gear upgrades. So as soon as you have like your first 2 or 3 divines, you could definitely get this, but it's gonna work fine with just 1 less. So these support gems are in order of importance. So most important is Arcane Tempo for more cast speed. Then we go for Persistence for more skill effect duration. The longer the spark lasts, the often it hits. Acceleration gives you more projectile speed. The faster the projectile, the faster they hit. Then we have Control Destruction here. We don't really play any crit whatsoever, so this basically is a free 30% more damage. And then if you have the 6 link, I would put Considered Casting on it. Yes, it takes 15% less cast speed, but as soon as you have a good enough mana pool, this actually doesn't matter all that much anymore. But if you are like still earlier with not like a huge mana pool, and if you're like not having the best attack speed, I would not put Considered Casting, because you will significantly feel the difference in cast speed there. So next on the list is Conductivity. You also want to give this 20% quality because this gives you 10% increased effect of the curse. Then we're going to use Heightened Curse for 25% increased effect. Then we use Ritualistic Curse, so it has 50% more area of effect. Don't worry about this 30% increased delay because we're going to use this as our weapon swap. So we have a second skill set and we're going to use all the curse buffing nodes from our skill tree. So we're going to get to the passive skill tree later and you're going to see exactly how it works. And then the last one is here the Hex Bloom, which makes the curse spread. It's kind of useful during breaches, for example, but this one is purely optional. So if you find your curse costing like too much mana, just skip this last one. These two ones are actually most important here. And this curse with like all the modifications in skill tree goes up to like 70% minus lightning res. So this is actually pretty strong on bosses and strong elites. Orb of Storms we just also use pretty much only in boss fights to apply exposure and to use mana regeneration, for example, again, before starting a ritual or before opening a breach. Or you can also use it while moving. I tend to not use it because I have enough mana regeneration. But if you don't have enough mana regeneration, it really helps dropping these. So if you have the Font of Mana in here, right, and if you drop it, you can see you get the Font of Mana buff here, and it gives you a 40% extra increased mana regeneration, which is pretty nice. Besides that, really drop it on bosses to do the lightning exposure with the strip away for even more exposure. Then you have the overabundance, so you can actually do it 2 times, right? This is basically for applying exposure even faster. So you just press it twice, basically. And that's pretty much all about Orb of Storms. In a breach, I'm not really using it at all because I have enough mana regeneration. But again, feel free to put this on the ground whenever you struggle with mana. But mainly, boss fights is where this skill shines. Then we have Archmage. Archmage obviously makes this build work, so it basically converts all your mana into a huge amount of damage. And so this one you also want to have 20% quality. This is most important to have 20% quality on, because this actually gives you another 2%. So as you can see, the base is 6%, and then you get another 2%, so this goes up to 8% in my case. So very important to get quality on your Archmage. Besides that, you know, just make sure it's active and put Lightning Mastery in it. It just gives you +1 level of the support gems, and we really use this because we don't have any other useful support gem for this, and it just gives it like a tiny bit more effect here. Then we have Mana Tempest. So Mana Tempest is actually insane. So when you press Mana Tempest, it basically triples or quadruples whatever. Like you do huge amounts of damage as soon as you stand in a Mana Tempest. But it's gonna drain your mana within like 4 or 5 or 6 casts. You're basically gonna be out of mana completely. So this gives you like a basically 86% extra damage. It's very useful, for example, also in a breach, because if you have like 1 or 2 jewels with 2% mana on kill, you will basically regenerate a huge amount of mana, because this one is basically just insta-giving everything. So whenever you need high damage, whenever you're on full mana and you have like a lot of elites to kill or whatever, you just put on Mana Tempest and your damage basically just skyrockets. So most important is, especially if you are still in the lower ends of this build and you feel like, hey, I'm doing no freaking damage, make sure you cast Mana Tempest all the time. Later on, it falls off a little bit when your spells are doing enough damage that you can actually kill most stuff without Mana Tempest. But if you're not there yet, just always put Mana Tempest. It doesn't matter. Just put it and cast 1 or 2 sparks, leave the Mana Tempest, cast a new one, cast 1 or 2 sparks, leave the Mana Tempest, and so on. And this will significantly improve your damage. And like in the range from tier 10 to a tier 15 maps, when you're still like looking for currency and gear upgrades, this really makes your life so much easier, so don't forget to cast Mana Tempest. And then we also have the pre-meditation on it. It just gives supported skills basically an extra 15% more damage. So Flamewall, I'm not using Flamewall anymore. Maybe it's different for you, but for me it feels like it's removing projectiles. So if you don't experience this, you know, you can absolutely play Flamewall with, for example, Spell Cascade, Fortress, and Energy Barrier here. I don't even know if Energy Barrier does anything or not, but you can still use it if you like to. You know, for sure it looks cool, but I think it reduces the amount of projectiles because there's like too many ground effects. And I feel like the game will remove these projectiles at some point. And here's a clip from that where I'm showing this a little bit more in detail. So I'm not using Firewall anymore because I've kind of have the suspicion that it eats projectiles. And what do I mean by that is just showing you now if I use Spark without Firewall for the entire duration of my mana, which is probably roughly like 6 seconds. And just look at the density here when I reach 0 mana. Right, as you can see, this is a very, very high density of sparks. So if I add in Firewall right now, you will see this density significantly decreasing, right? So let's put some Firewall here, and let's do the same thing. And now, after this time now, as you can see, it looks like this density is going down significantly. And I don't know like what it is with like spark projectiles being removed. I also have a feeling like if you have a map with like high graphical effect stuff that projectiles basically get removed to like save resources or something. But in general, if you put your Firewall and then let's just put some here. It starts ramping up normal, and then now is the time where it starts getting actually less. Right, so you kind of see significantly less projectiles, and maybe it's just like an optical effect or something like that, but maybe it's really just for the fact removing those projectiles. So if we go without Firewall again, as you can see, we just see significantly more, and as soon, even if we have the Firewall in the back there, it seems like the projectiles are just getting removed. Right, let's take a look at the passive tree here. So this is a level 90 passive tree, and I will kind of talk a little bit on the priorities if you have less skill points. So first of all, let's go with the Ascendancy here. So we want to go into Constant Gale and Force of Will. Arcane Surge is just crazy strong, and as we have like 5k mana, you get 1% increased effect per 15, so this is like already above 300% more. So this is very, very strong, gives you lots of mana regeneration and attack speed. And then you want to have the double shock here. So double shock basically gives the mobs 2 shocks. It just gives you a significant amount of damage increase, and I highly recommend getting this. Then the Force Ascendancy, if you already have it, is kind of a flex. You can use elemental damage recouped as energy shield. This is not crazy strong, but first of all, you get 4% increased elemental resistances here. And if you're again doing breaches and there's lots of mobs and you get like a lot of smaller elemental hits, this kind of gives you a better layer of survivability. Just gives you like basically free energy shield regeneration during taking hits, but it's not crazy strong. So the other one you can get here is just basically double the effect of exposure. So if you're more into like boss fighting, I would definitely recommend getting the additional exposure here. Then for our tree, we basically get these energy shield nodes here. Then I'm getting a good amount of energy shield. Still, I'm getting cast speed here. Mana regeneration, these whole nodes here, probably if you don't have enough points, you can probably skip them. Then we still get like these maximum mana nodes and everything here. We get all the mana regeneration energy shield here. This has 6% increased intelligence, so it gives us more mana. Very nice node here. And then I'm kind of passing this way here. Mainly your focus is jewel slots. So jewels are the most powerful stuff you can get in this game right now on the skill tree, except for keystones and stuff like that. So highly recommend getting as many jewel slots as possible, unless it's gonna be like crazy expensive. So we're getting all of these here with the jewel slots, and then we're getting these increased energy shield. This is a pretty strong node. So this node here, I felt like it would be super nice, but it basically doesn't work at all. So if you take this node here, as you can see right now with Eldritch Battery, it does nothing whatsoever. Right, so if I put this node on here, you can see I have 4.7 and 4.8, and if I put it on, it does literally nothing. I don't know how it works, I don't know if it's a bug or something like that, but somehow the conversions do not really work on this node. So this node literally is ineffective if you play Everlasting Gaze Amulet. If you don't play Everlasting Gaze Amulet, it actually does a tiny bit. It's not huge, but it does a tiny bit. But so again, I recommend saving this node. Then again, I'm passing over here. I'm getting these faster energy shield recharge, faster energy shield recharge rate is really nice, because if it takes forever for your energy shield to recharge, it's just going to slow yourself down. Highly recommend getting these Arcane Surge nodes here. Then we get our increased magnitude of non-damaging ailments. So this is going to increase the magnitude of our shock. This is basically just going to give us our Aures and elemental damage, even more energy shield here. And then we want to go to like the outer edges of these jewel slots here. So we get this jewel slot, this jewel slot. We're going to pick up Mind Over Matter. Mind Over Matter is really something you have to get as soon as you want to run Eldritch Battery. So Eldritch Battery, Mind Over Matter, and the Everlasting Gaze Amulet, these three together are very strong. And the investment to get that running is very low. So I highly recommend getting these. We have an earlier version of the skill tree where you're not using that yet. So make sure to check the planner in the description down below to check that version. Then again, we get more jewel slots here. We actually do this passing here, so we can pick up this jewel slot as well. And we'll pick up the chain here. So this chain for lightning skills works flawlessly, right? So you will notice a huge difference between having chain and having no chain. It's a difference like night and day. Then we're getting all the spell damage and mana here. Obviously, we get the mana regeneration while moving. We're always going to be moving. We have Eldritch Battery, as already talked about. Then we have all the lightning damage here per intelligence. This is a pretty strong node. Then we still get like here better magnitude of shock. Again, we have double shock. And so this is basically just increasing the bonus damage we do to mobs. More energy shield, intelligence. We get skill effect duration wherever we can. We get projectile speed. And this cast speed node here, I would say it's optional if you don't have enough points yet. So you can save these 4 points. And then we go to CI here to become immune to chaos damage. So next on, what I would change is probably try to get these 2 jewel slots here if I have enough points. So let's talk about the weapon set. So weapon set 1, I have basically this lightning stuff I have on my weapon set 1. Then I have this damage stuff on my weapon set 1. I have the projectile speed here on my weapon set 1. And that is already... So I'm technically missing 1 point on my weapon set 1, but I don't really need it. And then weapon set 2, as already said, this is the curse set, right? So this is the green ones you see here. So we get all these curse nodes here. Increased curse duration, increased effect, increased curse duration. This is reduced actually, but doesn't matter. Increased effect. So this gives you a huge amount of increased curse effect. And then here we have one more curse node, which also gives you area of effect, increased effects, enemies are hindered, have less movement speed, increased area of effect. So this basically makes it pretty large. And then last but not least, we have one more curse node we are passing through here, which is even more effect after, 50% of curse duration is expired. And these also give you even more increased effect. I don't really like these ones here. If you really struggle with regeneration, which I don't do, you can do this, but these didn't really give any effect, so I opted for these ones here. So let's talk a little bit about the jewel slot. Jewel slots are basically the most important. You want to really try to pick up as many jewel slots as possible. So at this point, I'm running one jewel with recover 2% mana on kill, and I want to have basically increased skill effect duration on everything. And then I try to have a third beneficial stats, but I have to do another iteration on my jewels. Mine haven't been upgraded for a very long time. But I basically need 2% mana on kill to have a very good mana sustain, for example, during breaches. So I wouldn't recommend getting more than one of these because these are fairly expensive. You can also get 1%. They are not very expensive. And, you're not going to lose all that much. And on all the other jewels, I basically get cast speed and skill effect duration, and I try to get a third beneficial stat, right? So this one, cast speed, skill effect duration, I always put it like for minimum of 12%, and magnitude of shock, for example, is great. On this one, I have cast speed, skill effect duration, and this one actually also doesn't have like a third benefit, so something to replace here, right? On this one, I have cast speed, skill effect duration, and this one also doesn't have a third effect. So again, one I'm replacing. I'm trying to replace 3 good things on every jewel slot, basically. On this one, I have Care Speed, increased skill effect duration, faster start of energy, shield recharge, and implicit corrupted lightning resistance. So this is like a pretty insanely good one here. On this one, I have Care Speed, skill effect duration, increased energy shield recharge rate, 10% energy shield as additional stun threshold. So this is also a pretty godlike jewel here. And I think this is all the jewels I have on here. So next thing, if I get more spill coins, is basically getting this jewel slot. This jewel slot, that's my next priority. But basically try to, get on your jewels always cast speed, skill effect duration, and a third beneficial one, which will be either magnitude of shock, magnitude of ailments, faster start of energy shield recharge, energy shield recharge rate, or it can also be maximum energy shield. These are all pretty good third modifiers. Alright, so let's first look over the gear, and then in the next section we also have gearing instructions. So when to buy what kind of gear, when to upgrade, stuff like that. So it kind of depends when you have how much currency available to upgrade your gear. But first we go over the raw gear and the important stats. So let's start with our wand. So here, the priority are the +3 to all lightning level spells. I want to upgrade this to +4, but don't get too zealous about +4. Yes, it's going to be a significant damage increase, but it's also going to be a significant price increase, right? So you will get a +3 with nice cast speed, mana regeneration, and maximum mana for the same price as basically +4 without any stats at all. So always try to go into the range where you're like comfortable paying for this. Important are really the plus levels, the cast speed, then the mana regeneration, then the spell damage. So that's like the order of importance there. Then for your focus here. So same story. So focus basically scales in price the more energy shield it has. So I don't recommend going for one with a crazy high energy shield value right off the bat. So you can go for one with a little bit lower energy shield, like 150 plus energy shield, and you get this for significantly less money. You will get much more mana and stuff like that. So my focus is pretty bad. This is probably the next piece I'm going to upgrade. So again, here the priority would be +2 of all spell skills. Then you want to have maximum mana. Then you want to have cast speed. And then you want to have as much energy shield as possible. And then you want to have spell damage, basically. For our helmet. My helmet is already pretty good, but it doesn't have rarity. And item rarity right now is the most important stat you want to have. So 400 energy shield is pretty good for a helmet. You can definitely go for one with a little bit lower. So what I'm trying to do on a helmet is really get 300 plus energy shield, depending on your budget. You want to have item rarity on here, like 20-25% item rarity is very nice to have it on the helmet. Then your next priority would be more mana and then some resistances. For your chest piece. Chest piece is kind of... so it is very nice if you can get spirit on this. But spirit makes it significantly more expensive. If you have spirit on it, you can, for example, run a clarity. And it just helps. If you have more than 40 spirit, you could also, for example, run like an Arctic Armor and a Clarity. And it's basically like a free extra skill slot. But don't sweat the spirit here. So for a base, I would highly recommend either getting the Cass Raiment here with mana regeneration or the Altar Rope. Because these are not that much worse than the Hexus rope, so these will not have significantly less energy shield, but the implicits are very strong. Both implicits are pretty much, valued the same, I would say. If you have the one with energy shield recharge, you can go for mana regeneration on the gear. If you have the one with mana regeneration, you can go for energy shield in your passive. So you kind of, switch these out. Then I recommend getting like somewhere around 700% energy shield. You can definitely also run this with like a 600 or even a 500, absolutely no problem. Then your priorities would be, if you want to have a better chest piece, get, first of all, intelligence, very good on the chest piece, because it's just going to give you maximum mana. And then you want to have resistances on there. And again, if you can get spirit, if you're lucky to pick up a piece with spirit, it's nice, but don't sweat it, it's not mandatory. So then gloves. So gloves is basically, I would just recommend getting any energy shield. I feel like energy shield on gloves is not important. You're not gonna get a crazy high roll. Try to get maximum mana, rarity, and resistances here. Again, maximum mana and intelligence is pretty much the same, right? So this comes to like 140 maximum mana or something like that. And rarity, very important stat. I highly recommend getting rarity on these pieces, and you want to have, you know, some kind of resistance. Same goes for boots, basically. Boots can have high energy shields, so I recommend getting like 100 plus energy shields boots here. You want to get 25% upwards movement speed, then again you want to have mana, rarity, and ideally you want to have resistances. I tend to not need the resistances on my boots because I have resistances elsewhere, but you could get resistances. These pieces are all not very expensive, right? So these are like all in the range of like 10 to 20 exalts right now. This one is crazy expensive because I picked this up like very early. Right now these go for like 3 or divines or something like that. These armors is like 10 to 15 exalts. Like these wands are roughly like 20-ish exalt range. This is also like 20 exalt range. So this is not crazy expensive gear. And if you just want to, you know, go for a little bit less stats, you can get these pieces like in the range of, you know, single-digit exalts. Then for the belt is basically just used to fix resistances. So you want to have one charm slot. It helps because then you can get the stone charm and the freeze charm, right? So stun and freeze are basically what's going to kill you. So if you have one of both charms, it really helps quite a bit. And then the rest on the belt is just pick up resistances, mana, and one charm slot. And then for the rings, so for the rings, I get rarity. Mine are not very good. You can get much more rarity on your rings, but basically I try to get a high amount of mana, a high amount of mana regeneration. Then I do quality for mana, so I get even more mana and mana regeneration. And then try to get rarity and fix some resistances here. Same with this one here. So this one has also like 20% rarity, 200 mana. Dexterity is nice because you don't need the dexterity in the skill tree, obviously. Again, it has a resistance and high mana regenerations. So these rings were also in the range of 20 to 40 exalts each. And then last but not least, the Everlasting Gaze. So as soon as you can get this with like a 27 plus roll, I would say, get this. This is very important. This makes your build so much better because as soon as you have Everlasting Gaze, you can pick up Mind Over Matter and Eldritch Battery. And this Everlasting Gaze basically gives you your energy shield, right? If I take this off, I go to 0 ES. And if I put this on, I basically get like my 4.73k energy shield here. So I highly recommend picking this up. Right now, these cost 2 exalts, 2 divines, which is not a huge price anymore. So then, just some side notes. A lot of people are saying to play these Kitokos here for electrocution. So if you are doing very high damage and you have a high chance of shock, these will give you a good amount of survivability. I don't want to play this because you need crazy amounts of currency to fix your resistances without gloves. And you really need high damage and high shock for these to do anything. If you don't have very good gear, I don't recommend playing these because, you know, it takes very long to electrocute stuff if you don't have crazy high gear. So, you know, the crazy rare, which is gonna teleport on you and one-shot you with 2 hits, it's gonna do it regardless because you're not gonna electrocute it fast enough. So I don't like playing these. Maybe if you have very high gear, these work out great, but for me, in the current state, they don't really work out at all. And with this gear, so it's probably roughly in the range of, I would say, 5 to 6 divines, my gear. Right now, that's the full worth of the gear, which is essentially nothing, right? So this is very, very low level gear. And I can easily play like maps like this, right? I can easily play tier 15 maps, tier 16 bosses, tier 17 bosses, tier 18 bosses, absolutely no problem. I can fully juice my maps and play them. I have no issues whatsoever. I don't have the breach yet fully juiced. That's something I'm working on to get my breach better. But with this kind of gear, you can absolutely play these maps, absolutely no problem. And I started playing this build, and I switched to Everlasting Gaze at around tier 12. Maybe it was a little bit late, But you can definitely, as soon as you have decent energy shield, you can switch to Everlasting Gaze. And as soon as you do this, you're just gonna go to tier 15, no problem. Alright, let's take a look at the gearing instructions. So this gearing is for when you're right coming out of the campaign. So this requires level 65 basically, right? So maximum requirement is 65 because a lot of items will be at this level 65. If you're a little bit lower, I recommend either getting like some levels. It goes fairly fast if you do very low maps, but you can also obviously put the level requirement a bit lower. So I have links to all these searches in the description down below. So let's just start with the chess pieces here. So chess piece query basically is just like a weighted sum above intelligence, resistances, and spirit. And we have energy shield, in this case minimum 500. And we put everything to exalted orbs here. So if we search for chess pieces, as you can see, we're in the 3 to 5 exalt range. So again, depending on how much currency you have, you freely can lower, for example, this requirement to 450. And now you will go into like the 1 exalt range, right? But let's look into like the little bit higher again. Again, feel free to lower this. As you can see in a chess piece, we will find chess pieces with roughly 500 energy shields. So very important is look for the ones which do not have sockets yet, right? So this one is already socketed as 500. This is unsocketed at 500, so this will go up to like 620 or something like that. So as you can see, this one is 635 because it's already socketed. This is not socketed, has only 503. And really, we just look for the energy shield number and resistances intelligence. It's nice. If you can pick up something with spirit, it's very good because you can run an additional clarity, but these usually will be significantly more expensive, so I recommend going for something like this. So let's go over to the helmet. So for the helmet, we have pretty much the same filters as for the chest piece, but we have a little bit different here because we have rarity in here, because we want to have item rarity on our helmet. Then we have spirit doesn't matter on the helmet here, but doesn't matter if it's on or not, because it's not going to do anything. So we have the weighted sum intelligence again, we have level 65 again, and I'm going for minimum 200 energy shield here on my helmet. So as you can see, we're in the 1 to 3 exalt range, and we find helmets with, 28% rarity, good amount of mana and intelligence, 1 resistance, and 100 energy shield plus. Again, here same story. Look for the ones which are not socketed yet, because this is 203 with socket, this is 200 without socket, so this will jump to like 230 if you socket it. Going on with the gloves. So gloves, you have a little bit more stats you can get here. So if you look at our filters, we have the gain mana per enemy killed. This really helps on mapping. If you have a good value like 20, 30 mana per enemy killed, and you kill a lot of enemies, it really helps with mana regeneration. Besides that, we still have our mana and intelligence filter. We have our rarity filter on here. Again, we still have resistances. For gloves, we basically use minimum 10 energy shield because it doesn't matter. And then we max dexterity and strength here, so we don't get anything which is not pure energy shield. And we have the same search again. And if we look at this, you have, exalted orbs, like we're in the 1 exalt orb range right now. We're getting rarity, mana, intelligence, resistances, rarity, mana, intelligence, resistances. So we get decent gloves for like 1 exalt in this range. And again, feel free to, you can make this value higher to get more mana, right? So if you put this to 150, you will find better gloves. I'm already in the 50 range, but maybe you want to get, for example, lower rarity at this point. And you can see we're in the 2 exalt range again. So you have a little bit less rarity, but a little bit more mana. So you kind of have to balance it out. But I recommend getting a good amount of rarity at that point where you want to start mapping. Then let's go for the next item, which is going to be boots. Boots, we have a minimum of 25 movement speed, same resistance, same mana and intelligence filter here, and same rarity filter. We want to have a minimum of 50 energy shield in this case, and again we have pure energy shield. So we are in the 1 to 3 exalt range here, so we get 25 movement speed, 124 mana, 15 rarity, 30 cold dress, 25 movement speed, 120 mana, 18 rarity, 25 cold dress. So this is the range again. We're in the energy shield of 70, 78, 98. I do not recommend optimizing energy shield at low level 65. You can get higher level energy shield boots later on. Then next up is our belt. So belt is even more simple. We just have basically belts. All they do is they fix resistance, they give us mana and energy shield, they give us mana and intelligence, and we're gonna pick up a charm slot here, right? So one charm slot. I have 30 min resistance here and 150 mana and intelligence combined. So we're in the 1 exalt range here easily. We get 166 mana, 1 charm slot, 1 res, and, you know, open suffixes, prefixes. You could exalt slam these, but yeah, so I wouldn't spend more than 1 exalt on a belt if you're still in the early phase. Next stop is rings. So we have 2 of them, obviously. So rings is a little bit more complex. For rings, I still have the resistance on here, I have it to 25. And now we want to have maximum mana intelligence, mana per enemy killed, and mana regeneration. Mana regeneration is very important, so I highly recommend that getting on the rings. And I have a rarity filter here in as well. So let's look at the rings we're getting. So we're getting in the 1 to, you know, 3 exalt range here. Rarity, intelligence, 68% mana rack. We have 69 mana, 18 intelligence, so a total of, what is this, like 100 mana, 23 rarity. We get 33 increased mana regeneration rate, stuff like that. And here again, if you don't want to have so much rarity, you can lower the rarity filter and, you know, higher the mana filter. And you will get, okay, we're a little bit high, I guess. Maybe we lower the rarity a little bit more, so we get the implicit ones as well. Well, still a little bit high, I guess. But again, we are at maximum item level 65. So here we have like some with, you know, 179 mana, fire res, mana rack, little bit of rarity, and we are like in the 1 exalt range now. So try to, you know, play with these values. Usually lowering the rarity filter will make items much more affordable. Also lowering the resistance filter can make items much more affordable. So let's go to the more important pieces now. We have the amulet here. So for the amulet, we are not running Everlasting Gaze at level 65, right? So at this point, we still want to go for a regular amulet. So here's my recommendations. Don't go for a +2, go for a +1. That's my recommendation here. So we have the filter for the +1 to all spell skills here, right? And +2 is going to make it very expensive. And if you're still in the early game and we want to have basically a 10 spirit one, because 10 spirit will allow you to run clarity on your Archmage. So that's actually powerful. It gives you like 30% increased mana regeneration basically for free. Then we run still rarity, 20%, and we have our combined mana stuff here again with 120. So as you can see right now, we are in the 5 to 10 exalt range, so maybe a little bit high. This one has a little bit of spirit rarity. So I guess also either you could drop the rarity filter entirely on your amulet to get better stuff. So as you can see, we're easily in the 1 exalt range here at, you know, no problem. So we could probably even go for like 175 in the mana, and so this is comfortably like 4 exalt range, right? So this is mana regeneration, mana regeneration, mana intelligence, spell gems. They all have like the 10 spirit on here, right, which allows you to run clarity, so add another 30% mana rack. So I feel like these are very good amulets to pick up early on. Alright, let's go on with the wand. So wands are pretty easy again. Well, actually not pretty easy, but we're still at the max level 65 here, right? So we have a little bit bigger weighted sum here right now. So we have mana intelligence, gain mana per enemy killed, increased mana rack rate, cast speed, spell damage, and lightning damage. This is actually the wrong lightning damage. Let me fix this. Increased lightning damage. This one here. And I have these at a weight of 1. And then we have level of all spell gems at a 3 right now. So this is a pretty decent wand. And if we search for this now, as you can see, we're in the 3 exalt range. I feel like putting like 3 exalts into a wand is pretty good. You know, if you really want to just go for 1, you can lower this value like probably somewhere to like 170. Still, maybe you have to lower it even further. So now we are in the 1 exalt range, but I feel like items are getting a little bit bad. This is actually pretty good if I would pick this up at a +4. But these have all +3, usually in the 1 to 2 exalt range. But, you know, highly recommend getting a little bit more mana stuff on your wand here. So I guess spending 3 exalts on a wand is pretty good. So let's look at these. It has a little bit of spell damage, 142 mana, +3, 28 mana rack. This one here 150 mana plus 3, 48 mana rec, still 2 open affixes. So we get decent wands for like just 3 exalts, which perfectly work with this build. So for the focus, we have like relatively similar filters. This is exactly the same filters than we had on the wand. We only go for +1. Again, we are in the level 65 range, right? So +2 is going to be expensive. +1 is going to be relatively cheap. And we're going to do a little bit less energy shield, like 150 min. So let's see what we actually get here. So we're in the range of 3 exalts. And we get 150 energy shield. Here, same story again, right? Check the sockets. This one has 180 without the socket. This one has 150 with the socket. And we get good amount of energy shield, a little bit of mana, a little bit of cast speed, mana regeneration, +1 all gems. So this is pretty good in this range. If you want to make it a little bit less expensive, you definitely can go a little bit lower on the energy shield value. So if we, for example, lower this to 120, as you can see, already we are in the 1 exalt range easily. So try to play around with these filters a little bit. But this is pretty much what you need to gear your very early game character. And if you put all these together, you will not need to spend more than 10 to 15 exalts on your gear. And this is going to get you easily to like tier 12 plus maps. And then you can just farm the currency. And on our next iteration, we basically going to upgrade our gear. And that's going to be the next section. Right, next thing, I'm going to have the level 75 and whatever above. So basically this is the next range of gear I would recommend to purchase as soon as you have the funds. So this focuses basically on the same items like before, but with much higher values. This would be a good deal, by the way. Maybe we can pick it up, but most likely not. Let's try it anyway. So on the chest piece, we basically changed the energy shield to a minimum of 700. And we still want to have the same weighted sum of intelligence and code res and spirit, but we add a new filter to just get like the mana regeneration or the start of energy shield recharge implicit. And as you can see, we're in the range of 15 to 20 exalts here right now, and we're getting like decent armors with like 700 energy shield, intelligence, resistance, and pretty much we have mana regeneration or faster start of energy shield recharge. So these armors, like ranging from 10 to 20 exalts, highly recommend picking these up as the next. Then I would go for the helmet. So helmet, we still have the same filters. We bumped the energy shield minimum to like 250. We still have like a 20% resistance sum here. Mana and intelligence I put to 150 total, and I put rarity 20% on here. So let's see what we get. So we are again in the 20 exalt range, so you can always lower your requirements either in mana to get lower, right, in the 10 exalt range, or you can always lower your requirements in energy shield a little bit to find better deals here. As you can see, 7 to 10 exalt range. So you really have to balance it a little bit for yourself, how much currency you have available and how far you want to get in this stage of gearing. But usually in this stage, I would spend like 10 to 20 exalts per item, maybe a little bit more on wand and focus. So next up is the gloves. So gloves, we want to have more resistances now because we want to focus on resistances a little bit less on rings because we want to have better stats on rings now. So I bumped the resistance to like 30 for the gloves. Again, we still have like any energy shield, doesn't really matter. I have a mana sum of 200 here right now, which is relatively high, and I have like 15 rarity. So as you can see, we're in the 20 exalt range right now. So maybe a little bit high with the high mana amount here. So if we pull this back to 150, we will find a lot of stuff here, right? And then you can try, if you really want to like heavily fix your resistance, you can try to get, for example, the resistance up to like 45 or maybe to like 40 to find something in the like 10 exalt range. Maybe still a little bit expensive. Maybe you can get something with 35. So you kind of have to balance that out on your own where you want to put these stats. These filters are basically just a good baseline. But this is something I would probably purchase, like a high amount of resistances, 15 rarity, 150 mana, 40, 50 energy shield. Like these ones for 20 have 100 energy shield, which is nice to have. Again, 21 rarity, some mana. Mana per enemy killed is a great stat early on. So these are also like stuff which are great to pick up. Then let's go for the boots. For the boots, we didn't really change anything but bumping up the energy shield value here, because boots can have relatively high energy shield value. So right now I'm bumping it up to 100. I have 25% minimum increased movement speed. I have some resistances here, a minimum of 150 mana and a minimum of 15 rarity. So as you can see, we're in the 10 to 20 exalt range, I would say. So these ones, for example, have, you know, 109 energy shield without sockets. They have a resistance, 70% rarity, 169 mana. So not too bad. These ones here are corrupted, have a little bit more mana plus intelligence, rarity, movement speed, good amount of energy shield, right? So something in this range, definitely worth picking up. Next stop, the belt. Belt don't really change anything, but we now want to have more resistances. So right now I'm putting mana on like 150 and resistances on 40. You can definitely get a little bit more resistance out of a belt. As you can see, these are already at like 46 resistances. So belt I would mainly use to fix mana and resistances here. I wouldn't really worry about any other stats here at all. And as you can see, these are like decently in the 10 exalt range. Again, if you're low on budget, I would probably just decrease the mana to like something like 135. And you're, well, still in the same range actually. So it might be the resistances here. But, you know, at some point you will find cheaper stuff. As you can see, here's one for 5, which just has like 134 mana and stuff like that. But the charm slot costs you a little bit, but I would recommend getting the charm slot for the freeze and stun charms. Without the charm slot, you can get way better belts, but I still would recommend picking up the charm slot. Then we have rings. So rings are important at this stage, I would say. This is something I would spend a little bit more. So for rings, right now I change it to have like at least 25 resistance. Maybe you want to change this to 20-ish if you don't have enough budget. I set this to at least 20% rarity. And I want to have a 300 sum of mana, intelligence, and mana rack and mana killed. Right, so let's see what we can find here. So these are in the 50 exalt range. So these are expensive, but keep in mind these are already, for example, this is already a Juice Breach ring here. 200 mana, rarity, another intelligence, fire res, 45% mana regeneration. So this one here, 70% mana regeneration. This doesn't have to, this has no quality yet, so this will bump up to like 90% mana regeneration. So this is a pretty decent piece actually for 60 exalts. But if you don't have that much, you can probably, first of all, decrease the rarity to like 15. And maybe decrease this roughly to like 250-ish. And now you will be in the very, very, very low range here of like 5 exalteds. The rarity seems to be pretty much the driving factor there. With 15%, you actually also get into the range of having an implicit on a gold ring. So if you would lower this, for example, to like roughly 12, we could probably go back up to like our 300 mana value here. Well, not 3000, I guess, 300. And now you will see we can find the gold rings, basically, which are a little bit cheaper here. And still in the higher ranges, though, with the high mana requirement. So maybe you want to draw back a little bit on the mana requirement here if you want to really save some bank here. Then let's go for the amulet. So at this point you want to pick up Everlasting Gaze. This is going to be your only expensive piece. And I set it to like a level 30 right now. To a 30%, right? Because you definitely want to have upwards of 28% in this mana's maximum energy shield stat. I wouldn't buy the corrupted, which are unanointed. It's just stupid, so forget about these. But you should be able to pick these up with 2 exalts. If you don't want to... So this one you will have, like a lot of people will be sniping these, right? So you would want to run this as a live search. If not, just draw back at this at 28%. It's not going to be a huge difference. It's going to be rough to get the ones for 1 divine. You can try to get them for 1 divine, but usually they're immediately sold off. But you can try. But you will not pretty much get these in a range of below 1 divine, unless you want to go for a low roll. But I really recommend at least investing 1 divine or 2 divine into this amulet. And now let's go to the wand. So for the wand, I in this range I increased the stats here to like 500, and I'm still going for like +3 skills because I think we're not in the super high end level here, right? So in the range of 25 to 30 exalts, which I feel like is a good range for a wand, you pick up really nice ones. So in this filter, we valued the cast speed very high, because at this point we want to pick up cast speed on a wand. So as you can see, we have like these will all have like 25, 27, 29% cast speed, 150 plus mana, 3 gems, either mana per enemy killed or mana regeneration. So these are all pretty decent. If you already have more cash, you can try to go for a +4. You will not find this in Exalted, so you will find this in Divines. But you're looking at like 2 to 3 to 4 Divines. So I would not switch from +3 skills to +4 skills before actually having access to like 3, 4, 5 Divines. So I would rather go for Exalted trading on a wand with a +3 until you really have some spare Divines here. Pretty much same goes for the Focus. Focus, we bumped up the energy shield to like 200. These stats are pretty much the same still. We don't have the cast speed valued that high. I have it at 5 here. It's nice to have cast speed on wand and focus, but I wouldn't sweat it on the focus. Focuses with cast speed tend to be more expensive than wands with cast speed. So, and focuses are driven by the energy shield value as well. So getting an expensive focus with cast speed and energy shield is going to cost you a freaking fortune. So in this, I basically have it at 200 energy shield, and I have it at 2 skills for spells, and we have like the 120 sum here. So we don't have the mana very high right now, because we are still in the lower ranges of like 15 to 30 exalts to just get like a high energy field focus. If you want to spend more, you can go a high energy shield focus and bump up this value to like, you know, 180 or something like that. So as you can see, we're already in the high exalt range here to get more mana on them. But would not recommend going for a lot of mana on a focus early on. I would also rather recommend to keep like a little bit less mana on the focus until you have a couple of divines to spare. And as soon as you can trade comfortably for divines, I would disable the trade filter, and then you can definitely go for, you know, like a 200 plus paid in divines. As you can see, we're in like 2 divine range. And if you are getting a little bit more, maybe you can get this to like 230 or something like that. And as you can see, we are already running. So as soon as these get cast speed, right, they are running into high amounts of divine. So I don't even have a cast speed focus yet. So really don't sweat this whole mana story. Focus on a higher energy shield rather. Right, as for the jewel slot, I have 2 different queries. So in the earlier game, most likely I just play cast speed and increase skill effect duration. And these filters have like a third beneficial stat on them. So if we look at the filters, we have mandatory skill effect duration at 12. We have either cast speed or recover mana on kill. Usually mana on kill is much more expensive, so on the lower end you will just see the cast speed ones. And then we have everything else, which is kind of beneficial to us. So these are in the range of like 10 to 15 exalts. So jewels are very expensive. If you are really not having a bunch of exalts and you want to like go a little bit lower, you can change this sum here to kind of 9. And you will at least find a little bit with like 3% cast speeds. But still, you're not going to be very satisfied. So you want to basically remove the third filter and maybe go down to like 10. And now you are in the range of 3 to 5 exalts, right? So you go 10% skill effect, 3% cast speed. Like these kind of things you can get for relatively cheap. But, you know, later on you want to increase those filters again. And then you want to, in the early game, you don't really need the mana on kill. In the late game, I would recommend getting 1 or 2% mana on kill. So I have the second one here, which basically says I want to have mandatory 2% mana on kill, and I want to have that with skill duration and cast speed, and here's my beneficials, right? And you see like these are right now in the 40 exalt range, because the 2% mana on kill are pretty expensive. So if you really want to go cheap, you can lower this to 1, and you will find a lot of in the 10 exalt range. You will have to run 1 more of those though, right? Because it's really like double the effect. But, you know, it's not a huge deal to get these with 1% and run 2 or 3 of them. But I recommend, if you have the spare money, to get the 2% ones here. And obviously you can always remove the third useful stat. But I feel like running jewels with like the third useful stat is not really that beneficial, because these tend to be not that expensive overall. Like for example, this one has 3% cast speed, 10% faster start of energy shield, and recover 1%. It's just 10 exalts. Same with this one here, 19% faster start of energy. So these stats are pretty good early on. Especially if you get the magnitude of ailments. This is also very strong. It gives you like a lot of more shock damage. So definitely I would recommend trying to get one of these beneficial stats on your jewels.